Kanjilal and I'm Sales Director at Kiss the Fish. And there's some details there on screen if you want to look up Kiss the Fish and find out a bit more about us. So I'm going to talk to you today about finding purpose in your career and being brave. And the reason I decided to do this is because I work with young women. I mentor for a couple of charities, and I've also managed lots of sales teams during my career. And I realised that people want to find a purpose in their career, often don't feel brave enough to do the things that they need to do to really progress their career, and actually feel like they need to have a plan very early on, or even sort of mid-stage of your career, and actually that isn't always the case. So I'm going to talk to you about my career and the decisions I made along the way and the lessons that I learned in each of those roles, and give you some advice that I can give you from those different roles. And they all work around the theme of being brave. I think it's one of those things that's been a theme throughout my career. And there's a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, which is on the screen there, which is to do one thing every day that scares you. Now, I don't do one thing every day that scares me, but I try and do things generally that feel scary, because I think if you push yourself out of your comfort zone, that's where you really progress. So some truths for you to start with. No one's going to plan your career for you. There will be people that will help you along the way. There'll be career development plans and line managers, but actually it's you that needs to take charge of that yourself. You need to have a plan. Lots of people don't like having plans, but there's usually some kind of plan in people's lives. And it could be things like wanting to have a job that allows you to earn enough money to buy a house or go on holiday. It doesn't always have to be about the career plan. And be prepared that the plan might change. There could be all kinds of things along the way that cause changes to that plan. And you will need to make some brave decisions along the way, because that's what happens in life. So what was my big plan? Well, for me, everyone in my family is a doctor. That's a picture of my dad there on his graduation day, and a few years later in his surgery. He was trained as a doctor in India, and that's what allowed him to emigrate to England. He was one of the £3 generation that came with £3 in their pockets to England to make their lives here. And not everybody in my family is a doctor, but generally lots of people are. And talk of careers was really around that. And I didn't know what other careers really were available, but I knew it didn't feel right for me. I wasn't interested in that, so I needed a new plan. So my plan really was to just study what I liked studying. I enjoyed English literature, so that's what I studied. I went to Sussex University and did a degree in English, which I absolutely loved, had a brilliant time there. And I then progressed to go to London to do a master's degree in English literature as well. And that was as far as I'd got with my plan. I didn't know what else I wanted to do. And then once I graduated, I realised that I needed to earn some money. So then I needed to think about what the next stage of the plan was. And I kind of thought I would start a job and my career would go like this. I didn't expect it to be a completely linear graph, but I thought really I would be able to kind of progress my career, end up in a senior role, and that's just how it would go. I didn't really know what I wanted to do either, but I thought that as I had a degree in English, I was quite interested in marketing. So I started looking for marketing jobs in Brighton, applied for all kinds of different roles. There was a lot of competition at that time, and I think there still is for those kinds of jobs. And I ended up taking a role at a company called Paxton Access. If you haven't heard of them, they make electronic access control systems. If you haven't heard of the company, you've probably used one of their products. If you ever used a key fob to get in through a door, those are made by them. And that's me looking very serious there at an exhibition when I was working for that company. That was at the NEC. Now, when I took that job, I didn't know anything about electronic access control at all, had no idea at all. But I decided that I was going to just make the leap, take the job. It sounded interesting. They were in Lewes at the time, very small company of around 20 people. Most of my friends were taking jobs in bigger companies. I decided this one felt right and decided to take that role. And I started off in marketing, but actually very quickly discovered that I enjoyed sales more, and I became the export sales manager there. And it was absolutely brilliant, and I had a great time there because I was the only person responsible for sales outside the UK. Most of the sales they had were in the UK, and I had a really free rein to kind of do what I wanted to do. And my objective was to grow the sales outside the UK. So I did some brilliant things that, when I look back on them, were really brave. I learned to speak French fluently in the evenings, and then I went to France, got a hire car and drove around to distributors in France to sell the products. I went to Japan, I went to Dubai, I went to America, all kinds of places and I just used to get on the plane and just go on my own on most of those trips, and really learnt a lot, and had a fantastic time. And I would have stayed there, but I felt like if I didn't go and do something else, I never really would. My lesson from that role is to really get stuck in. It was my first job out of university. There were all kinds of opportunities to do all sorts of different things, but it just involved getting stuck in, putting my hand up and saying, yes, I'm going to do this. And that's what I did, and had a brilliant time there. When I decided to leave there, I thought it was time to progress to somewhere bigger. I thought I'd experience a big corporation, and I thought about the things that I enjoyed doing, which at that time were I enjoyed traveling and I knew I wanted to earn some money. So I joined a company called Delarue. If you haven't heard of them, they have a license to print money. They are a banknote manufacturer. And I joined their identity systems division, which sells border control solutions to governments. So it was a good role because it involved lots of travel, and it was a good salary. And it also, for me, was quite eye-opening because suddenly I was flying business class everywhere. I had gold cards for all the hotel chains. I was traveling to all kinds of places like Bangladesh, Albania, Cape Verde, all kinds of different countries, and meeting people the kind of people I hadn't met before. So it was British High Commissioners, foreign ministers, lots of different kind of government officials. And it was all about selling border control solutions to governments. I had to travel 2 weeks of every month, so I was away a lot. The company was in Basingstoke, so it involved a commute as well, unless I was working from home. And I found that role really eye-opening. So I'd kind of leapt into it thinking that a corporation was what I wanted to do. Got there and found that actually life's very different when you make a move to a corporation. There was about 4,000 people there. There were layers of management. It's quite a traditional kind of company, real lack of diversity. I found things quite challenging and had to really struggle to be taken seriously a lot of the time. And it was hard work. It was really, really hard work. But each role I've done, I've always wanted to achieve something before I move on. And so I stayed there 2 years. My patch ended up being North America and the Caribbean, which was brilliant because I used to get to spend weekends in places like Barbados when I was traveling. And I did have a really good success there, which was that I sold a contract to the government of Quebec for a driving license contract that kind of got me known there. And it was a good achievement that was really the success that I had there. And at that point, I then decided that I wasn't happy. I wasn't really enjoying it. I was traveling so much, I was never at home. Yes, I was earning good money, but I felt like I never really got the time to think about how to spend it. And business class travel on your own after the novelty wears off gets a little bit dull. So the lesson there is that money and travel don't necessarily buy you happiness. So I then decided to make a different kind of move to a smaller company, which is a company that is involved in technology for ships to stop them colliding. So it was kind of similar because it was border control, but it was to do with ships, and it was a much smaller company. This was around the 2008-2009 recession, when there was the financial crash, and kind of from the minute I joined that company, it didn't quite feel right. I wasn't feeling comfortable there. And I stayed there a year and did sell a contract to a big American distributor while I was there, but I never felt comfortable there and it never felt right. So I decided that instead of staying there for longer and not being happy with it, it was time to look for something else and move on. So the lesson there is to trust your instincts. It didn't feel right from day one. And actually the right thing to do was not to kind of tough it out and stay there. The braver decision, the braver thing to do was to move on. So I then joined a company called ETV, who are in Chelmsford. They're a science and technology corporation involved in all sorts of different science projects, selling to organisations like CERN. And the pictures that you see there, one is the Rosetta mission, which I don't know if you remember the landing on a comet. That was the Rosetta mission, and that was the sensors that took all the pictures. All the images you saw were sensors made by ETV. They're also involved in radiotherapy machines, which is the picture that you see down the bottom there. They make the technology for radiotherapy machines, so all kinds of science applications. And it was quite a different move for me. Another corporation, they were about 2,000 people, and I decided that this one, I knew nothing about the technology at all, really. It was all very new to me. Their technology was very physics based. I was never that great at physics at school, but this was one of those moments where I decided to do the brave thing and just take a leap and go for it. And there's a couple of pictures there that kind of sum up my time there. The first one at Go Ape was a team event at Go Ape with the sales team. The two ladies there were actually in customer services. The rest were the sales team, and I took that photo. And when I joined that company, they told me they'd never had a woman in the sales team, and that was my team. And it was very much, challenge for me to join that company because they weren't used to having a woman there. I think they really didn't kind of know how to behave towards me a lot to start with. But that company really made my career because I got stuck in. There was some grit required there to prove everybody wrong and that prove all those people that I could do the job. I had some great successes there. I won one contract quite early on, which made headline news in the company, but also made the national press. I then went on to close a deal which was the biggest value contract they'd ever closed in their history. And as a result, I got promoted to the role of Vice President of Sales and Marketing. I had a team based all around the world. I was responsible for about 80 million of revenue a year, and it was game-changing for my career. They also were a company that really were involved in career development and helped you with learning and development. And I was really pushed to do different things in my career as well and really push myself there. And the second picture is the group of people who were selected for their fast track management scheme. And I was one of the people selected for that scheme. That was the first year they'd run it. And that was all about career development, and it was a learning and development program. And so that company really, for me, was game changing. So having decided to take a leap to do something brave to this tech corporation, it completely changed my career because I really progressed and moved to a senior role, moved to the senior management team in that company, was responsible for a lot of revenue and had a big team to manage, and got lots of learning and development along the way. So it turned out really well. It was probably the most significant role of my career. But it was hard, that job. It was, especially in the early years. So I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about the structure of that company. So when I joined, there was around 2,000 people there. And in the senior leadership team, which I progressed to, there were around 100 people there. And in the whole company, there were about 20% of the company that were women. In the senior leadership team of 100 people, there were 10 women. And in the exec board, the top of the company, there was one woman. So it was quite a male-dominated environment, a very science-based environment, lots of people who were very clever scientists there. And it was hard. I really had to find grit and determination there to succeed and be brave all the way along, actually, and really push myself to really achieve things there. What I would say about that role is I loved it, even though it was hard work and really pushed myself. I was never really at home because I commuted to the Chelmsford office and I travelled around the world a lot. So it was all consuming and took up a lot of my time. But it was a great role and I really enjoyed it and progressed my career through it more than I can really have expected to have done in one company. So the lesson from that rock company is if you're learning and progressing, stick with it. I was there for 8 years, but it was 8 years where I learnt new things every day, pretty much did brave things every day because it was that kind of company. It was always changing and there was lots going on there. I decided to leave there, not because I was fed up with it, but because they were acquired by a large American corporation. And I decided at that point that I was quite tired from all the traveling and never having much time in my life. So I decided to move on to do something different. And everyone there expected me to move to another tech corporation. They were sending me, that's the kind of thing they were expecting me to announce. But actually, I decided that it was time to do something completely different. So I moved to a smaller software company in Brighton, Magex. You might have heard of them. They make career technologies, which creates best fit connections between talented people and employers. And I absolutely loved it there. It was game changing for me to suddenly be able to walk through the lanes to work instead of having to do a big commute. They're a really friendly company. Everything was good fun there. I'd never experienced Friday beers in the office before. It's not something that was done in the tech corporation that I worked in. And I really enjoyed the job as well. So I joined initially in a kind of senior sales role. I progressed to running the sales and customer success teams, and within the senior management team there, and worked with some great brands like The Guardian, The New Scientist, Mumsnet, The Economist. They work with some great brands, and Wiley, who have recently acquired that company as well. And I had a really good time there, but the biggest sort of life change for me there was that I suddenly had free time. And I realised that I wanted to do something with that free time instead of just not actually using the time for anything useful. So I started mentoring for the Girls Network. And the reason I did that was that I realised when I was younger, I would have loved to have someone to talk to about different kinds of careers, because I just didn't know what careers were available. So the Girls Network partners professional women with a girl, and you work with them for a year and help them kind of make career decisions and talk to them about different options. And I've been doing that for a couple of years. And then I also started working with the Brighton Digital Women team. We organise events for women in Brighton in the evenings around all kinds of different themes, and we have guest speakers. And that's us a few weeks ago in the pub when we were still going out to the pub. And I suddenly had time to do all these things, so it really changed things for me. And I had a really good time there, and I've enjoyed life since I've been doing that. So the lesson there is that sometimes the best careers are actually local, and you don't need to do a big commute. You can just walk down the road and find some great companies to work for that will really be a nice place to work. And I would have stayed there had something else not come along my way. So I was approached by the Liberty Group, who provide part-time professionals to companies who want to grow, small to medium companies, and they have different brands for each professional function. You'll see them along the bottom there. So the FD Centre is finance directors, for example, marketing centre, the marketing directors, Freeman Clark is IT directors, and going along the different functions. And the way this works is that you work freelance, you work for companies that want to have an experienced person but don't want to take them on full time. And this came along and took me by surprise, because it's not something I thought I wanted to do. But when it came along, it was just too good to turn down. So now I work as a consultant sales director for Kiss the Fish. We provide part-time sales directors to companies that want to grow their sales, grow their revenue. This is a range of companies across all kinds of different sectors. Sometimes there'll be a company that's got just beyond the startup phase and want to now grow and want help with that. Sometimes it could be that they've grown, but revenue is not growing as they want. It could be that they want help with just the entire sales strategy, or it could be things like hiring their team as well. And we typically work 1 day a week for each client, and across a range of sectors, and we're all freelance, so it means that there's much more freedom and time in my life. And we also provide sales training courses, which are courses that different companies can go to learn about different sales functions like negotiation and that kind of thing. And really the word, the Liberty Group, has meant liberty for me, because there's now so much more time in my life to do different things, because you only work the days that the client wants you to work, and the rest of the time is my own. And what I found is that this was all completely unexpected. It wasn't part of my plan at all, and took some bravery to decide to actually do it. I've gained total freedom from it, because I now can do pretty much what I want in the other days of the week that I'm not working for a client. It's allowed me to be really creative, because each business that you work with has a different challenge and a different solution, and it suits my need for variety, because it's very creative with each company that you work with. And I've kind of rediscovered my passion for sales through it, rediscovered what it is that I love about it, because you go right back to basics with each sales team that you work with and each company that you work with. So it's completely unexpected. So the lesson there is to be prepared for a plot twist, because something might come along that takes you by surprise and turns out to be the thing that you end up doing. So some advice for you. The first is mentoring. I've had some great mentors along the way, particularly when I was doing the fast track scheme at ETV. I had a professional mentor then, and also just had some other mentors along the way in my career. It doesn't have to be through a formal program. You can approach people who you admire, who you'd like to get some advice from, but it's a really good way to progress your career. And it's also good to help younger people by mentoring yourself, because you get a lot from that too. Just do it. Lots of things that have happened to me in my career, lots of career changes and progressions and promotions have been because I've been that person that just gets on and does it, just delivers. Be really proactive, say yes to opportunities, get on and do things, and that's how you'll progress your career. take risks. There might be some things that feel scary along the way, but just take the risk, because you know what? That's how you really progress and grow. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't quite work out. And be brave. I always come back to this. This really is what the thing that will be the game-changing part of your career, if you can just be brave and do those things that scare you. And that's, to finish, is the details of Kiss the Fish if you want to get in touch. And if you have any questions at all, do give me a shout. I'd love to hear from you. And it's been great talking to you. Wish you all well. Bye.